Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome to a brand new edition of In the Shop. And we've got a really good one for you today. And today we're going to be talking about a hybrid technique called power shotting. Power shotting. And power shotting is basically drop shotting with bigger baits, heavier weights, and heavier equipment. And power shotting can be so good for catching bass that normally don't see larger lures that are drop shotted. So we're going to be talking about power shotting. If you look at the basics of a power shot, it's the exact same setup as your lighter finesse drop shot. Everything's the same. The bait and the hook are in line, tied above the weight, which sits on the bottom. That lets this bait dance and ride horizontally off of the bottom. You can control your leader length from a couple inches all the way to a couple feet. The only difference in power shotting is everything is upsized, right? Everything's upsized. Instead of little tiny 3 and 4 inch worms and 1/8 and 3/16 ounce weights, now we're using bigger hooks, bigger weights, and of course, bigger baits. I want to walk this through you a little bit, talk to you about some of the hooks, the weights, the baits. Then we're going to talk about when and where you want to fish a power shot. Last but not least, we'll get into the rod and the reel for this technique. First thing is hooks. As I mentioned, because we're going to be using bigger baits, heavier equipment, and a lot of times we're fishing for bigger fish, we want to upsize our hooks, right? So instead of using little number 2 and number 1 size hooks, we're going big. And I like anything from a 1 or a 2/0 all the way up to a 5 or a 6/0 hook. And depending on the bait, I like either a straight shank hook or an extra wide gap, okay? This is a 5/0 EWG VMC hook, and it's a good one for power shotting when you're using those thicker bodied baits. A thick worm, or especially a big creature bait. And this is one of my favorites on a power shot, is a creature bait. Look at that thing right there, and of course it's power bait. The thing smells so terrible, but this is a 5-inch power hog. This is a big bait. This is a 5-inch Berkley power hog. I go ahead and I break all the appendages open. It's got a ton of action. It wiggles, it shimmies, it shakes, and I'm going to Texas rig this bait on that big 5 or 6/0 VMC hook. And, you know, again, you do your Texas rig, it's going to be snagless, weedless. You're going to be able to fish it through cover. Just want to make sure that bait's nice and straight. And I tie that in line to my line here. It's in line. It's above the weight, okay? That's a 10-inch power worm on the same style hook. Again, fat body, extra wide gap hook. Creature bait, extra wide gap hook, tied in line. I also like, I really like big straight tail worms as well. A lot of good ones like mag style finesse worms. This is a big flute worm. This is our 6 3/4 inch, almost 7-inch magnum flute worm. And that body is a little bit thinner, right? It's not as thick as that big giant creature bait or big fat worm. And for those situations, I like a straight shank hook. A 2 or 3/0 Nico or Nico finesse hook is perfect, but we're doing the same thing. We're going to Texas rig it. We're going to rig it in line. All right, next is our weight, right? So we've got our bait in line, we've got a down leader, and we're going to add a tungsten drop shot weight. Once again, the only difference, we're going to stay away from those lighter weights, 1/16, 1/8, 3/16. I'm going to leave them at home. And when I'm power shotting, I'm going with those heavier weights from a 3/8 of an ounce all the way up to a big 3/4. I'm going to use a heavier weight. And that's going to help me create more of a reaction strike when I'm fishing a power shot. And that for sure is one of the key differences. That big weight is going to allow me to get to the bottom quick. I can fish it in and around cover, but it's going to fall a lot quicker. And that bait falling super fast, whether it's a worm or a creature bait, triggers a reaction strike. And that's why this is sort of a hybrid, right? A power shot is drop shotting, but instead of taking our time and finesse fishing it with light line, we're fishing it with heavy rod, heavy line, and it's falling fast. And because of that, we're going to get a reaction strike. So heavier weight. I love the VMC Teardrop Tungsten. It's a perfect design. Now I want to get to how we're going to fish this thing. And the power shot is a great technique for fishing in and around cover and when you're creating that reaction strike. So I let this, when I make that cast and I'm casting toward cover, I'm going to let it fall on a semi-slack line so it falls straight down. Once it gets to the bottom, it's falling so rapidly. Once it gets to the bottom, just like a traditional drop shot, I'm not doing heavy jerks or pulls. I'm kind of shaking it in place. A power shot and a drop shot, I'm doing the same thing. Once it hits the bottom, I'm shaking it in place. And when you do that, look at this. That weight is on the bottom. It's keeping that worm or that creature really high off the bottom, depending on your leader length, and it's keeping it horizontal in place. Look at just with me just shaking my rod tip just a little bit. You're getting a feel for what that bait's going to do. It's going to dance and jiggle in place horizontally off the bottom. And that's such a natural presentation. But once again, instead of those little baits, we're using these bigger baits. 6, 8, 10, even 12-inch baits on this power shot. And when you're fishing around bigger fish, Texas, Florida, California, places that have a lot of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10-pound fish, bigger baits will get you bigger bites. I want to talk now about the line, the rod, and the reel. And because it's power shotting, we're going to upsize our line. We're going to get away from a spinning rod with 6, 8, and 10-pound tests. Now we're going to go to heavier fluorocarbon. And when I'm power shotting, I'll use anywhere from 12 all the way to 25-pound fluorocarbon when I'm fishing in heavy cover. And it's a great line. Fluorocarbon's dense, it sinks, it's invisible, and it has a lot less stretch than mono. So fluoro is the way you want to go, but stay with that heavier pound test. 17 and 20 is what I use most. I use Berkeley 100% trilene fluorocarbon. All right, let's talk about the rod and the reel for power shotting. I'm going to say it over and over. Power shotting is not finesse drop shotting. And because of that, instead of a light spinning rod, now we're going to go to a casting rod and reel with a little bit heavier action. At the end of the day, though, this is still a drop shotting style technique. So I don't want to go to an extra heavy or heavy action. I'm going to use a medium heavy action rod, anywhere from 7 to 7.5 foot long. Okay, so medium heavy, 7 to 7.5 foot casting rod. My favorite is this Abu Garcia Ike Series power rod. It's got the perfect action, a little bit of tip, a lot of backbone. It's the perfect action for fishing a power shot. On the reel, a low profile casting reel is what you want, because a lot of the bites are going to hit it and come at you. A lot of them, they bite it and you almost get slacklined because they hit it and they come right at you. You want a casting reel with a faster gear ratio. I like the Revo Ike. This is the 8-0-1. Lets me get a lot of line pickup for those fish that hit it and run at me, okay? So low profile casting reel, faster gear ratio. Last thing I want to end with is where to fish this. And a power shot is going to work around a lot of different variations, from open water, dragging it like a Carolina rig over points and humps, to fishing it around cover, especially sparse to moderate cover. I've used this setup around deep weeds, grass that's in 12 to 15 feet. I've used it in standing timber. I've used it around isolated brush and cane piles. And for sure, this bigger weight and bigger profile, it targets bigger fish. It weeds out the little ones. This power shotting technique, if you're fishing around big fish and you want a technique to catch bigger ones, this is a great one. Keeps the bait horizontal off the bottom, lets you adjust the leader length, and keeps the bait in place, just like a natural forage. I hope you enjoyed this one, because this is a really under talked about hybrid technique. It's finesse and power combined with a bigger lure, and it's called power shotting. Do me a favor, stop for a second, hit that subscribe button. If you do that, we're going to get you brand new content every week, educational, entertainment, controversy. It's all coming your way. Subscribe to Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. You're going to get more of this great content. Hope you enjoyed this episode talking about power shotting. Good luck. Hope you catch a giant.